Hey Mackie, welcome to your next video lesson. I'm going to focus on what we talked about, or what I talked about the last time about the different tiered systems, S tier, the questions to ask before the flop, after the flop, etc. What I've done is I've really simplified it because I do think this is a little too much content for a beginner to really be thinking about. So what I did was I just chose the most important S tier questions that you want to be thinking about on every street. So before the flop, on the flop, on the turn, and then on the river. And then I put in highlights sort of what you're trying to answer. Like what question, when you answer these questions, it will help you to answer the main question. And the main question is just going to be pre-flop, should I play this hand or should I fold it? And if I do play the hand, how should I play it? Should I be aggressive or not? And then on the flop, the main question is, do I want to bet? Do I want to call a bet? Do I want to raise a bet? So obviously, what do I want to do with my hand now that I'm on the flop? On the turn, do I want to bet again? Do I want to call a bet again? Do I want to raise? Again, like how am I going to play this hand? And then on the river, it's a little bit different because there's no more cards to come, so there's no more draws. So if you bet, what are the chances that a worse hand is going to call you? And then if you call, what are the chances that you have the best hand? So it's really all comes down to those two questions in the river. And you could add to that, like if I raise, what are the chances my opponent will fold? As another one. But that's next level thinking. We're really going to focus on simplifying things just to these. I guess I got 3 or less questions on every street. So I'll quickly go over them, and then I'll play one game, and I'll ask these questions and try and answer this main question on all the streets as we go, and hopefully that will help it to cement into you sort of the questions you got to be asking. So I'll just refresh them. The pre-flop questions: what is the strength of my hand? Do I have pocket aces? Do I have 7-4 offsuit? What is my strength of my 2 cards? What action happened before it was my turn? Has anyone entered the pot yet? Has there been a raise? Has there been a 3-bet? Has there been 3 people call? What's happened before it's your turn? And then thirdly, what is your position at the table? So you're going to ask these 3 questions, and it's going to answer whether you should play the hand or not, ultimately. And then once the flop comes out, these are 3 important questions, which is how many opponents saw the flop with me? Did I hit this flop? Did my cards connect with this flop? And is this flop likely to have hit my opponents? So again, you're going to ask these questions, and it's going to answer, do I want to bet? Do I want to call? Do I want to raise? It's going to answer this question through these questions. Then the turn, a little bit simpler. Did the card change my hand value? Did it make my hand better or worse? And did this card complete any obvious straight or flush draws? And then that just answers the question, do I want to bet again? Do I want to call? Do I want to raise? Same idea. Then finally on the river, the question is, did this card change my hand value? Did it make my hand better or worse? So same as this turn question. Did this card complete any straights or flush draws? Same as the turn question. And then finally, what are my chances of winning if I show my hand down? So if I either bet or call, or it goes check, check, what are my chances of winning if I don't fold on the river? Um, and those 3 questions are going to answer, I guess there's 2 questions on the river. If I bet, what are the chances a worse hand will call me? It's question 1. And then question 2 is, if I call, what are the chances I'll have the best hand? So you can use these questions on the river to decipher or get a better chance to be right to answer these questions. So I will pause, I will get a game up, and then I will have this to the side and start sort of walking us through all of these questions. Okay, we have our first hand. Our hand is weak. The strength of my hand is low. I'm in early position, and there's been 1 limper before me. So I will just play it passively. Obviously, I came in and posted posted the blind in the first hand, so I didn't have a choice to put this blind in. And now I'll re-ask the question. The strength of my hand still weak. Now there's been a 10 times raise in 2 callers before it got back to me. So just because my hand is weak and nothing else, I will fold. Okay, what is my strength of my hand? It's fairly weak. No action because I'm the first player and I am in early position. So that is a fold, being in early position. That the early position made was actually the most important factor in making this fold. Okay, next hand we have King 7 offsuit in the big blind. Strength of my hand is weak. My position at the table is weak, and we'll see what the action is when it gets to us. So far there's been one player limping. The button has also limped, and if the small blind doesn't raise, then we will see the flop for free. So there's an easy check here. Now the flops come out. How many opponents saw the flop? 3 opponents. Did I hit this flop? No. Is this flop likely to hit others? Not really. So most of these questions are bad for us, so we're just going to check and fold if anyone bets. And then we'll see what happens. So everyone check. Now the turn has come out. Did the turn change my card value? No, I still have king high. Did it complete any straights or flushes? Not really. There's no, it put a backdoor flush on, so if someone has 2 hearts, then they would have a flush draw. But it didn't really change the value of my hand, so that's a fold. Okay, we're in the small blind. Same thing. What's the action? It's been 1 limper and 1 player raised to 4. Our position is the worst, and our cards are pretty much the worst. Okay, next hand. What's our position? We're on the button. What's the action leading to us? There was a limp and a raise. This is clearly a good player. And what's the strength of our hand? Pretty good. So we've got 2 of the 3 things going for us. We have a reasonable hand, and we have the best position. So I decided to 3-bet this hand to $1.40. Keeping it simple. There's reasons behind this. This would be a regular, probably a good player who is likely going to be raising most of his hands, especially against the weak limp. So we're attempting to just isolate against him. And both players call. So now we ask the flop questions. How many opponents saw the flop? 2. Is this hand flop likely to hit others? The answer is no. It's a paired board. There is 1 flush draw. So we're going to take that information into account, and we're going to continuation bet. Now the turn came. Did the card change my hand value? No, we don't really have anything. We didn't on the flop either. Did it complete any straights or flushes? No. But now we have a situation where opponent has bet a massive amount into us on the turn. So that makes the decision easier. And we're down to 5-handed. But again, same questions before the flop. What's the strength of my hand? Weak. No action before me. My position is late position because there's only 5 players. Okay, we have queen deuce. We have a fairly weak hand. One thing to remember when you're playing shorter handed, so because there's only 5 players, there really isn't an early position. You're always going to be in middle or late position, so you do have to adjust your hand strengths accordingly. Okay, we have 9-8 offsuit in the small blind, or the big blind, sorry. So the question is, how strong is our hand? Decently weak. What's the action leading up to us? We have a player who has posted the 10 cents and this regular who is raised to 40. With that raise, we're just going to fold. Okay, now we just have a fold, bad position. Doesn't really matter the action before us when you just have a bad hand. You just fold. Okay. What is our position? We're on the button, the best possible position. what is our the action? Everyone folded to a late position player who's going to raise as the first one in. So we're going to choose the aggressive path and we're going to 3-bet. We certainly could just call here and we could fold. I mean, there really isn't that. There's a lot of options with a hand like this. So the flop, how many opponents on the flop? Just one. Did I hit this flop? Yes. Bottom 2 pair. Is this flop likely to hit others? Yes. So we're going to bet with that information. We did get raised here. There's a fairly small raise, but we are going to proceed very cautiously. I can't think of a worse turn card than that, because now our 2 pair became 1 pair. So then you ask the question, did this card change my hand value? Yes, it made it much worse. And did this card complete any straights or flushes? No, but it completed top pair, now becomes 3 of a kind. So with all that information and that turn card, that becomes a fairly easy fold. Okay, now we just have the trashy 5-3. We've got the weak 7-6 offsuit. Okay, we have a weak ace. We're in early position and we have a fairly weak hand, so that is going to be a fold. Weak hand, early position. Okay, we are now in the big blind with 6-7 suited. The strength of my hand is medium. The action before us so far, there's an early position raise from a fairly tight player, and everyone else is folded, so we could certainly call here 30 cents. I think that's reasonable. Now we're going to look at the flop. How many opponents in the flop? Just one. Did I hit this flop reasonably well? We have top pair. Is this flop likely to hit others? I would say no. But that being said, we are out of position, so we're going to proceed with caution. Now the turn card changed a lot. It changed my hand value a lot. It completed a flush draw. So it certainly is not a good card for us. And so I think we're going to check and fold here. Because it is more likely by our opponent not betting the flop that they have a hand like ace king, ace queen, ace jack, something like that. Okay, now we are in the small blind. What is the strength of our hand? Very strong, S tier. What is the action? We got 2 limpers, 2 weaker player limpers, so we want to raise fairly high to try and get against just one of them, or perhaps win right out is fine too. So we did get against just one of them. Now we see the flop. We saw just one opponent. We didn't hit the flop, we didn't really need to, and the flop is not likely to hit others. So we will continuation bet. And finish that hand. Okay, next hand. Our position is the button, the best possible position. Our hand is medium strength, and the action so far is 1 raiser and then a re-raiser, a 3-better. So if there hadn't have been a raise in the 3-bet, we would likely call here, but with that extra aggressive action, we're just going to fold. Okay, what is the action? It's been 2 limpers. What is our position? Late position. And our hand is medium, a little bit higher than average strength. With 2 limpers, I'm going to raise and attempt to get against just 1 or 2 opponents. We'll see if that works. And the hope here would be to just get, say, heads up against one of those opponents. So now we look, flop. How many opponents saw the flop? 3. Did I hit this flop? Somewhat. Whoops. And then this flop likely to have hit my opponents? Well, 10 jack definitely is likely to hit my opponents. Queen king, 9 queen, 8 9 all hit the opponents with straight draws and such. Now the turn comes. Did the turn change anything? No, it certainly did not. It did not make my hand better or worse. And then did it complete any straights or flushes? No, it put 2 spades on board, so there's a backdoor flush. I think our hand with middle pair is good enough for a single call, just an attempt to hit a 10 or a king, which would likely be good. But we're going to fold on the river to this player showing aggression on the turn and on the river. They very likely have a hand like a big jack, jack, queen, or something similar. Okay, weak hand, going to fold. So I think as I play, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add to this list sort of the why behind why we're asking the questions, because it's some of them are really easy to understand, some of them are a little more challenging. Like how many players saw the flop? How would that change what you're going to do? So I'll start with pre-flop. I'll sort of write it in different contexts. So the strength of your hand, the better your hand, more likely you should be to bet or raise with it. That seems obvious. So the strength of my hand is medium. My position is bad, so I will fold. Raise or 3-bet. Or 3-bet with it. What action happened before my turn? So why are you asking that question? You're asking that because if there are many limpers, you and your hand is good, you will want to raise more than you would if there were no limpers. And also, if there is a raise, you should be a bit tighter than if tiger. Then if there is not a raise, and thirdly, if there is a 3-bet, you should be even tighter still. So position is terrible, and that's why we're going to fold this. So tighter still. So essentially, what action happened before it's your turn determines, in part, whether you're going to play the hand. So the more aggression there is before it's your turn, the tighter your hand range has to be. So let's say you had a hand like 10-jack offsuit. If there was a raise and a re-raise, or a raise and a 3-bet before it got to you, even if you're on the button, you should be folding. But if there's one limper and you have 10-jack offsuit, then you likely are going to want to get in there and raise yourself. And then the third pre-flop question is, what is my position at the table? And this is kind of the same as the first question. The better your position, the looser you can play. The worse your position, the tighter you have to play. Okay, so this hand is fairly bad, and there's been a limp and a 9 times raise. So this is going to be an easy fold here. So again, I'll just refresh the pre-flop questions and then why they make sense. So the better your hand, the more likely you should be to raise or 3-bet based on your strength of your hand. And then if there's a lot of aggression, a lot of aggressive action before it's your turn, then you should be playing a little bit tighter. So you might fold hands that are good but not great. And then your position. If you're in early position, you're going to play a little bit tighter. If you're in late position, you're going to play a little bit looser. So that answers the question of should I play this hand, essentially, by asking these 3 main questions. And then the flop questions. Why would you want to know how many opponents saw the flop? Well, the more opponents who see the flop, the more likely someone will have connected with that flop. So bluffing won't work. So we're going to play this hand. It's a strong hand, A tier. We're in the best position, so we've got amazing things going for us. We've got a pretty aggressive player 3-betting before us. I think with a raise and a call and a 3-bet, this is actually a little bit tricky. We're going to go to $3 with a 4-bet, just trying to get heads up against him. The first player is short stack with only $5, so that isn't really going to affect much. We're definitely going to get it in with this trusted guy and just basically try and get it heads up. They just called, so they're likely don't have aces or kings here. I don't even think they have ace king, so I'm okay just getting it all in here. A bit of a gamble, but again, against a short stack, we'll see where we are. So we're basically in a double flip here, and we got pretty gnarly rivered by 2 5s, but that was a pretty decent spot for us to get our money in with 2 players with pairs. All right, so let's go back to this. So hand strength is weak, so we'll fold. So we're answering the question, how many opponents are the flop? So the more opponents who see the flop, the more likely someone will have connected with the flop, so bluffing won't work. So another way to put it, so the less we should consider bluffing. Okay? Now, of course, it's important to know if we hit the flop, the stronger we hit the flop, the more likely we should be betting or raising. And then again, the third question, is the flop likely to have hit others? Why would we want to know this? The less likely the flop is to hit others, the more likely we should be to be bluffing. Okay, so we have a suited 1-gapper. It's a medium strength hand. We're in a decent position. We have 1 limp and then 1 5x raise. So we can go ahead and fold this. So again, to reinstate the flop answers, how many opponents saw the flop? Why do you want to know this? The reason you want to know this is because the more opponents that saw the flop with you, the less you should try and bluff, essentially. And then did you hit the flop? Of course. If you hit the flop, even if lots of people saw the flop, you still want to be betting. So that's kind of obvious. And then is the flop likely to hit others? So 5-6 offsuit is a fold. The more likely the flop is to hit others, the more likely we should be bluffing. Or sorry, the less likely the flop is to hit others. So if the flop is like 7-7-3, and you're against one opponent, then you should almost always bet. So I'll give you more examples like that. So the less players that see the flop and the less likely it is to hit other players, the more likely you should be to be bluffing at it. The more people that saw the flop and the more likely it is that someone else hit the flop, you should never be bluffing. So King 4 is a fold. I would say this is a bit of a feel situation, but on average, these kind of things will start to become commonplace for you to say, okay, how many people saw the flop? And did anyone else, is this a good flop or a bad flop in theory? You know, like this Queen 9-3 is less likely to have hit others. There's no flush draw. There's no straight draws really, except for 10-Jack. So maybe it would be a medium one. So the suits and the connectedness of the cards and whether the cards are high or low all kind of determines if the flop is likely to have hit others. 4-7 offsuit is just going to be a fold unless we get to see a free flop. If everyone just calls, we'll certainly see a free flop. Okay, we get to see a free flop just against one opponent, the blind. Okay, so on the flop, how many opponents saw the flop? Just one. Did we hit this flop? No. Is this flop likely to have hit others? I would say no. So because we're only against one opponent and it feels unlikely to have hit them, we're going to bet. And the turn didn't really change anything, so we're going to bet again. And we're just bluffing into a weak player, and he just folded on the river and let us win with 7 high. So that was a pretty good result. Here, we're in the worst possible position, and we have a terrible hand, so we're going to fold. So let's continue this game to the turn. So So why do you want to answer the question, did the card change my hand value? Did it make it better or worse? This will say, if your hand got better, you should be more likely to bet or raise. Okay, so here we have 6-4 suited. We're in the best position. We have a decent hand. There's been a raise and a call. I think this is a really fine spot to be calling, being that we're on the button. Now the flop comes out. How many opponents saw the flop? 3 other opponents. Did I hit the flop? Not really. We have middle pair, but it's a all spade board. And my position is on, sorry. Is this flop likely to hit others? Not so much. But that being said, I'm not in the habit of bluffing 3 fishy weak opponents. So I think we might do a tiny bet here, actually. No, we're not going to. It's just bluffy. We have a little bit of showdown value, meaning there's a tiny chance that our 1 pair of 6s would be good, but I would say it's very, very small. So we're just going to fold. We got to the river. Did the river change anything? Not really. Like 4 or 5 made a straight, but there's nothing to do here but fold. So again, the turn question. Of course, if your hand gets better on the turn, you should more likely bet or raise. If the turn card complete makes your hand worse, you should slow down. So it doesn't necessarily mean as soon as the turn card comes and it's like makes your hand worse that you just automatically fold. It just means you want to proceed with a bit more caution, assuming that you had a good hand on the flop. And then the other question on the turn is, did this card complete straight or flush draws? The same idea. If the turn card flush draws or straight draws, you should proceed with more caution. And then the same questions on the river. Did it change your hand value? Well, if your hand got better on the river, you'd be more likely to bet or raise. That kind of is the same. And then did it complete any straights or flush draws? Okay, so here's a situation, the ace-6 offsuit. It's not a very strong hand. We're in late position, and no one's entered the pot yet, so this is close. I mean, folding this is totally fine as well. But again, like I said earlier, when you start playing 4 and 5-handed, you have to sort of open up a little bit. So now the flop, we're against one opponent. And the flop didn't hit us, but it's unlikely to have hit them with a paired board and one bet and win that pot. So the river question is the same on here. Whoops. If the turn completes flush or straight draws, you should proceed with more caution. So perhaps maybe if you bet on the flop and you bet on the turn, and then the river completes a big straight or a big flush, you might not bet on the river. That's a good example. And then the last question of what are my chances of winning if I show down my hand? Well, that just means if your chances of winning are decent, you should call a bet or bet yourself. Okay, so here is a hand with weak hand. We're in weak. This is 1 limper. So it was only 5 cents to us, half a blind or a small blind to us. So I think seeing a flop with an offsuited connector is okay. And the flop came, it didn't help us. We have 2 opponents and it isn't that coordinated. So I hope I didn't make this any more complicated with this, but I feel like these 3 questions, it allows you to play fairly well without ever trying to like get reads of your opponent or looking at stats. You can really just focus on your hands for now and still be a pretty decent winning player. But I'm hoping this makes sense. So again, just to sort of finish the thought, you're trying to answer the question, should I play this hand? How should I play it? You're going to ask yourself, is the hand strong? The better it is, the more likely you should play it. What action happened before it's your turn? The more aggressive opponents have been, the less likely you should be to play it. And then what's your position? The better your position at the table, the more likely you are should play it. So you could take a hand like, let's say ace 3 suited, right? Ace 3 suited. And it will change what you do based on all these questions. If you're in early position, you're going to fold it because you're in early position. If you're in late position and the action before you, everyone's folded, then you're going to raise with it. If you're in late position and 3 people have called, you're probably going to call as well. So this will really help you before the flop to determine what hand you should play. And then obviously you're trying to answer the question on the flop. Should you bet? Should you call? Should you raise? And answering these questions is going to help you deal with that questions using these sort of answers here. The stronger you hit the flop, the more likely you should be betting. That's the most obvious one. Then the less likely the flop is to hit others, the more you should consider bluffing. And the more opponents that see the flop, the less likely you should ever bluff because, again, getting weak players to fold and bluff them is not a very good winning strategy. And then the turn again, your hand gets better, you should obviously be more likely to bet or raise. And then if any straights or flush cards complete, you have to be a little more caution. Doesn't mean you fold full pot every time with like top pair or middle pair. And then river, same idea. So, all right, I'll just play a few more hands. It's been half an hour now. Okay, I got ace 4, but we're in early position. So we're gonna fold. 9 deuce to the big blind. Nothing we can do here. But fold if it's raised. It hasn't been raised, so we're gonna check. Did the flop hit us? No. How many opponents won? Is it likely to hurt opponents? Not really. So we're gonna bet because 2 of those 3 things are true. The turn didn't change anything. I think we're gonna have to bet all 3 streets here. And then our opponent folded on the turn, so that was good. Eight 5 is a fold anywhere. Okay, we have a 1 limper, a min raise. We're in late position. Weak hand, just gonna fold. Bad hand, middle position. Terrible hand. Okay, early position. No action yet. Our hand is medium. So we're going to, first one in the pot, we're going to raise. We just win the blind, so that was kind of cool. All right, I'll wrap it up here. Just going to fold my 5-6. Didn't get a whole lot of excitement in that session, unfortunately, but hopefully the idea of using the questions as I went and sort of going in a little more detail on why we're going to ask those questions will help you just to cement in your brain the kinds of questions you're going to be asking in order to decide what you should do with your hands, ultimately. See ya.